What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to our J2M3 Jack. We are jumping right in immediately here, guys, on our national markings. Last episode I mentioned I wanted to go ahead and try to paint them on. So we have some tools. We have our circle hole compass cutter. We've got everything we need like rulers and whatnot. We have some beautiful tape. So we're gonna go ahead and give it a shot. Now for the tape, I mentioned last time, I'm gonna use this frog tape. This stuff is actually very, very nice. Really easy to cut and it's a little bit thinner than Tamiya. And we're gonna go ahead and make up all of our shapes for the different markings. Now I actually need two different sized circles and I actually did a quick test here and I did come up with something that looks about right. So we have an inner mask, an outer mask, and then the surrounding mask as well. So this is what we're gonna do first. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my circle hole cutter and I'm gonna go ahead and measure out the radius from the center of the circle to the outer portion of the actual marking. That includes the white outline. So once I kind of get that lined up, I can lock it down and that should be able to reproduce 6 circles with exactly the same diameters. That should be pretty easy to do. Now once I have that locked into place, I can really crank this down so it doesn't slip around, do a quick measurement. It looks about right. You know, I'm not really going too much off of my rulers, kind of using the old Mark 1 eyeball for this. Let's go ahead and go over to our tape, make sure it's nicely burnished down. We'll place in our center point. And let's go ahead and give it a turn, see how it cuts. Just a real quick, very easy turn here, and cuts really well, guys. This frog tape is really nice stuff. Yeah, looks good. Let's go ahead and make 3 more of these, and we should have a nice set for our wing and our side fuselage. These compass cutters are really, really handy to have. I highly recommend if you don't have one, they make a great addition to any model or toolkit. All right, last circle is nicely cut. Now let's go ahead and cut another mask inside the circle we just cut. And this is going to be for the actual red part of the circle. Undo that little lock there and I'll go ahead and just kind of measure it again. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and do the exact same Mark 1 eyeball measurement. I'm going to go from the inner part of the white ring to the center part of the red circle. Once we have our measurements all nicely locked into place, we'll move it over to our circles. And again, we're going to cut that inner circle right on top of that mask. And again, I'm going to use my exact same center point that I created from my previous circle cut. And I think that's going to be perfect. Should line up nicely, should keep the exact same measurement. So let's go ahead and do the rest of these. We'll be back and we'll see how they go. Now the circles are all cut. We are ready to go ahead and move on to actually sticking them down there to the aircraft. I'm going to start with the center red portion first. That's going to go ahead and mark off where I want each marking to be. And then once I'm satisfied with that, I can go ahead and put the outer mask on, and then we'll have our entire national marking all set, ready to go. Now that we have the center portion nicely in place, I think that's a good distance, and we're going to go ahead and take the next section right here, and boy, I've really burnished this down, so I'm going to have to use my hobby knife just to kind of pop that up off of the cutting mat. I have a little bit there, and I can use my tweezers, and then we'll just work up the rest of it. Once this is all completely removed from the cutting mat, I'll go ahead and place it down onto the model and make sure that it's lined up perfectly with the inner circle. Now there might be other easier ways to do this, but again, I wanted to go ahead and see if I couldn't do something just using the very basic tools like a circle hole cutter, some rulers, frog tape, and any sort of tweezers and whatnot. So I just want to see if I couldn't do it. I know there's lots of other things like pre-cut masks. There's that Cricut cutter you could always pick up, do your own masks. Now that we have our wings all nicely masked and ready to go, let's go ahead and move over to the fuselage. Now again, this is going to be a little tricky because we have not only the inner red circle, but also the white band around that red circle. So I'm going to go ahead and use the center part like I did before. We're going to get that positioned onto the sides of the fuselage where I think it should go. Again, I'm going to be using the instructions and kind of eyeballing it to see if I can't land it up more or less where it shows here in the picture. I'm trying to be real careful here not to rip or to misshapen any of the masks. A really good way probably to do this would be to use some sort of transfer tape. Sometimes using that kind of transfer tape to go ahead and take the entire mask in one shot, stick it right down where you want it, might actually be a good idea in this case. But I don't have any, so we'll just go ahead and muscle through, see what we can do. Now for the bottom parts of the wings, we're just going to do a very basic mask. Luckily, these are just red circles. There's no white bands on these, so that's going to be a whole lot easier. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and take the inner circle. We're going to place that down where I'm pretty sure the markings would be here, according to my decal placement guide. Then we'll take the outer mask, we'll stick that down around it, pull up the inner circle, and we'll be able to go ahead and airbrush everything with white and then red. I'm going to go ahead and use a white color as somewhat of a primer as well. That way everything matches. We don't have a darker red for the top and a lighter red for the bottom. We have everything even, and I think with that white base coat, that should give us a nice stepping ground to go ahead and work from and kind of build up our layers gradually. So once I have one side all nicely lined up, shift over to the other side, and then I think, yeah, let's go ahead and start getting our paint down. So now for the big moment, guys, we have our flat white by Tamiya. I went ahead and pulled up all the inner circles there on each of the masks, and we are ready to go ahead and lay down our primer coat of flat white. And then after that is done, like I mentioned, we're going to come back. We're going to then reapply the outer mask area of each of these circles, and then we'll go ahead and overcoat it with red. Let's go ahead and get this painting done. Fingers crossed, this turns out. All right, everybody, we are back, and so far the masks turned out decently. I like how this is. I like how the demarcation lines are pretty crisp, so I'm happy with that. But now we have to come in and do a little bit of post shade. Now to do that, I have some Vallejo flat red and I have some Vallejo flat white, and I've mixed them up here in my little paint cup, and we're going to go ahead and use that as somewhat of a lightning coat right in the center of each of the panels. Once that is done, it should give us a little bit of a sun bleached effect. I'm not going to push it too far, but I think that's going to be a really nice addition. Now I'm going to go ahead and concentrate on the center of each of these panels and get these a little bit faded out so it has a little bit of weathering already kind of painted into the surface. Get the propeller all set. So back into that time lapse, guys. Let's get that fading done on the red, get our prop primed, painted, and let's see how it turns out. All right, everybody, we are back, and I think this is actually turning out pretty decently. Let's go ahead and start pulling off some of my masking here on the propeller. The way I did this is I overcoated the entire thing in a Style-No-Res white primer. Then I went back with some nice orangey yellow and I overcoated the entire propeller blades in that orangey yellow. You saw that in the time lapse. Then I just cut some very thin strips of Tamiya tape, cut those into smaller squares, and I just positioned those on top of the yellow paint. Then I overcoated the entire thing in red-brown, and as you can see now, we can take our tweezers and pull up each of those masks, and we have a pretty decent looking propeller. I wanted the yellow orange to all match, and I think this is the best way to do it. Just keep the same process for each of the areas. Also, we're going to have to go ahead and do a little bit of work on different parts and pieces such as the wheels here. I have a punch set that I picked up that does a little bit larger diameter circles, so I've actually made a couple of these basic masks for the inner portion of each of the wheels. This is going to allow us to come back and airbrush the outer portion with our worn tire color, and that should be okay. We shouldn't have to worry about it too much. This will protect the center hub color, which according to the instructions will actually be the IJN gray. So I think that's going to be all right. We'll do a quick airbrushing over top of these just to go ahead and get that nice tire black color. Then we can go ahead and just start putting together the landing gears. I want to add some brake cables in there and get these all kind of squared away. Probably will do that next episode though. I just want to go ahead and get most everything painted so we're ready to start assembly. Now for the tires, I've actually chosen to go ahead with my mission models, and we're going to be using this tire black color, and it's actually a bit of a worn gray. It's almost like NATO black in a way. So we're going to use this for our tires. That should again give us a little bit of a worn look, and I think we'll be okay with that color. We can always come back and maybe darken it if we think it's too light or too gray. So I think it matches well with the rest of the aesthetics of the aircraft. So now that we have that all mixed up, we're going to go ahead and quick airbrush those wheels, and I think we'll be ready to go ahead and call it quits for today. Also, one thing I will have to do here is I need to go ahead and use my paintbrush, and we're going to come in here, we're going to paint the rear tail wheel. Now, most of the instructions call the tail wheel to be the IJN gray, so that that's all nicely painted. We'll come back and do a little bit of touch up here with that tire black, and I think we are ready to call it quits. But that is all for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me here on episode 6. Next time we're going to come back, we're going to hopefully get the rest of the aircraft all nicely assembled, and then we're going to get a nice gloss coat on top of that. And then all we have left is decals and final weathering, and then this aircraft will be finished. So until our next episode, guys, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on episode number 7 for the Hasegawa 1/48 scale J2M3 Raiden. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.